Hey, Adam, welcome back to the Z Learning Podcast. You're one of the few recurring guests on the show, so welcome back.
I love it. Thanks, man. I hope this will be the second of many more to come because we always have a good time, and I feel like we could just, like you said, talk for hours, but we also want to keep it, tight and listenable.
Absolutely. And there was so much great feedback on our last conversation, how naturally it flowed. And I think a lot of people got a lot out of it. I think we were grappling at the time to refresh the audience's memory. We were talking about ChatGPT and AI and, what is the future of writing? What's the future of content marketing, content writing? And we were asking a lot of the same questions and just talking them through out loud in real time, just as many of you listening were. So to just continue that conversation, curious, it's a few months later. Where are you at with content writing? Are you using ChatGPT? What AI tools are you using? Would love to catch up with you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's fun. I'm so glad we're coming back to this a few months later because it kind of feels like the dust has settled. No longer are people really like stumbling over the words chat gpt and what is it, chat gpt, chat gtp. But no, now people know what it is. They can say it. I think the general public has a bit of a better conceptualization of what it means, that it's an AI, that it's not Terminator, that it's not an autonomous robot like standing in your room, that it's an e-learning tool, and it's something that is only as good as the human who's prompting it. I think that's a really cool, like, base level realization to start with. I think at the beginning, when it was first coming out, people were like, "Well, that's it. It's replacing humans." But now I think it's more of general knowledge that the stuff that the AIs, whatever it is, ChatGPT, or we'll get into some of the other ones, spits out is only as good as the prompting. So the skill isn't really the AI itself, it's knowing how to prompt the AI. So that's still a very human focused aspect of these tools. So I feel like that's a great just realization that a lot of people have now.
Absolutely. I think like any good tool, it's in the hand of the user. And it's interesting, like you can say that ChatGPT can shortcut some aspects of the creative process and that you can say that it raises the bar. But I think it was Ray Dalio who said that I saw his take on this. He had a very forward thinking point of view on all these things. And he may be even ahead of where I'm thinking, but I'm, ahead of my comfort level even. But I do think what he's saying is correct in that humans historically have always just kind of evolved on top of the technology. We invent things, then we just keep beating like our old scores, the way I like to think of it, on top of whatever we're using. So ChatGPT
Yeah.
by itself isn't really much of anything, but with the right prompts and knowing how to, prompt things from the environment, your specific use case, your ideas, your clients' challenges, and all of that is unique and ever shifting. And you would need somebody who's in the field to, put now. I don't know. Maybe one day it'll get so sophisticated it'll prompt itself. It'll take information somehow
Yeah.
from the environment. Maybe it will be a robot. I think we're a long way away from that. But even then, I'm sure there will then be new opportunities that are created. So
Yeah, like then how do humans interact with it? But you're totally right. It's not prompting itself. In some ways, it's almost fun to think of it as maybe it's good that humanity and our minds are being challenged a little bit by this. It almost forces us to pay closer attention. I mean, just the conversation itself, there's so much more conversation around creatives and art. I obviously, you and I like to talk about the writing aspect of AI a lot, but when you talk about the artistic aspect of media and video and photos and stuff like that, I like how it's pushing the conversation. I think that's really healthy, and it's actually forcing us to work a little bit harder, whereas maybe we got a little lazy and we were more willing to settle for subpar content. And now, knowing how good it can be and how fast people can pump it out with AI, maybe it's forcing us to like all work a little bit harder, which I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
not at all. And yeah, you're right. I mean, I got into content marketing in like 2012, and that's around the time where that started like exploding. It still wasn't even much of a keyword, the word content marketing then, but it's since become completely mainstream. Like I remember 5 or 6 years ago, like noticing when non-marketers were using that term and thinking it was kind of interesting. But I think what has happened is that it's all become massive output, like cheap kind of like low quality, high quantity, high volume,
Yeah.
overwhelming um, content atmosphere. And this can kind of help us now when that part's easy, we can now focus more on the quality and our real talents can really shine. And I think that's great for people like us because no, we don't have to put as much energy into getting the facts down, into getting the simple buzzwords in. We can now just lay on top of that and put ourselves. Actually, in a strange way, I think AI will allow our humanity to truly shine and come
Yeah.
to the fore.
And not have to think as much about the errors as the fact checking or the writer's block. With all of these AI tools, the key word for me is integration. I want them as integrated as possible within reason. I'm not ready for, a Neuralink in my brain just yet. I don't think we're there. But if the extensions in Chrome or in Word and Google Docs can get better and better, that is going to make me more and more likely to use it. I am already, just with the way I like to work. I kind of like I turn on focus mode, I put everything on do not disturb, and I really like to wire in to whatever I'm working in. So having integrations is great because it doesn't force me to switch windows to necessarily use a tool, but the integrations aren't really there yet. They're getting there, but
Mhm.
the best one, or the one that's kind of the most user friendly, is Grammarly's, and their AI isn't great. I think it's called Grammarly Pro or something like, or Go Grammarly or Grammarly Go or something like that. And they say that it's an AI, but it's not finishing sentences in the way that I would want it to or anything.
Right.
But their grammar and error checking is still one of my favorites because it's so clean. It's easy to ignore and it's easy to use, which means that I can use it without having to give it much thought, and you're able to just kind of stay in that flow of writing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good point. We've all been using AI, whether we knew it or not, for like probably about 20 years now, honestly. Because
Yeah.
if you've ever written anything on Microsoft Word and had those little green or red squiggly lines underneath the with the suggested edits, or Grammarly, I was thinking of the same tool. I've been using that for years. And I think that the unique advantage is that when you can take that part out of it and then you have more time and more brain space and more physically, like more time on your hands to now really work on the creative end, that's where AI as an integration is the best because then it really allows you focus on what you do best of using your own creativity. And that's why I do think in some ways it makes us more human. Curious, what are some and also on the illustration part, not just in writing, you make a great point. Platforms like Midjourney, I see all the artists and graphic design people, they're loving it. They're getting even more creative than ever before. Um, it's sort of like you could say, well, when you did digital graphic design, did that replace art? Because
Yeah.
no, we still have painters and people who are artistic now just use these new tools to create ways they never could have before. And I think it's the same with AI and Midjourney and these kinds of things. So I'm curious now, as a creative, as a content writer, what are some of your tools, and specifically with ChatGPT, how or if how are you using that to either maximize your productivity or enhance your creativity?
Yeah. So I'll go right out and say that I am not the biggest adapter of this kind of new technology. I always like to have the newest, MacBook or iPhone, or I'm struggling with a Series 2 Apple Watch right now, and going to be saving up and kind of holding my breath for the next version of like the Ultra or something to come out. But with these kind of tools, I wouldn't really say I'm on the cutting edge. I'm more watching in the background and observing the conversation. And I think that really comes from the kind of work that I do. I think if I was writing web copy or sales copy, email campaigns, social media posts, I think I would be using this a lot more. But because most of what I'm working on right now is so much longer, is much more longer form. I mean, I'm finishing up the draft of a book. I'm editing another book. I'm about to start work on a white paper that we're projecting to be close to 10,000 words, which is all stuff that is too long for any of these AIs to really pump out in a way that is, in my opinion, like good enough.
Mhm.
You know, I think that where most people are using these tools is taking something long, like a book or a white paper, and breaking it down into really nice bite-sized chunks. I think that's something it has proven that it can do really, really well and
Yep.
effectively. And that's like the biggest time saver, because reading a 10,000 word article or a 60,000 word book and then trying to distill bite-sized articulate, interesting chunks, that is time consuming. That takes a lot of time, a lot of brain power, and
Yep.
you have to be really careful not to be repetitive, to make sure you're quoting it properly. So I think that the tools do that pretty well, and can, you can take a concept and say, let's talk about the importance of authenticity in your storytelling. Make me 5, 10, 20 posts about that, and it will pump that out so quickly. But because I'm not doing that kind of writing as much, and I'm more focused on writing the actual books,
Yep.
I'm not using it as much. And that's why I say I'm more of like an observational user, and I like reading the articles and, having conversations around it.
Yep.
But what I find kind of the funniest thing, at least now, talking, June 2023, whereas we've really been having this conversation since, December 22, but it really kind of blew up in February 23,
Yep.
is I say what I do to somebody in a networking meeting or a conversation, hey, I'm a ghostwriter, I write blogs, articles, and books. And very often the first question is, what do you think about ChatGPT? Have you lost business because of ChatGPT? And then, as I kind of say what I was just saying around, well, my kind of writing is really different than what these tools are being used for. So no, I'm not experiencing a loss in business, but I find it really funny, and I'm curious as to why it is that ChatGPT, which again, like as we joked, was kind of a phrase that a lot of people verbally stumbled over because it's like, oh, this is a weird combination of letter. What is ChatGPT? What does GPT stand for? Well,
Right.
most people don't even know. And when I looked up, just yesterday, what are the top AI writing tools right now? I looked through the top 5 Google search results. ChatGPT wasn't on a single list. It is
Right.
not in the top. It's not in the top running anymore, but it's still at the top of a lot of people's minds when they think AI, they think ChatGPT, they maybe even know the phrase open AI. And I think it was because they weren't even first to market, but I don't know if they had the best publicist or just the stars aligned, and they kind of encircled the globe, and now everybody knows ChatGPT. But in terms of quality, in terms of like what tools I think people are actually using these days, I don't think it's in the running as much. I think other ones have really taken
Like
the
Jasper
spotlight.
and those things.
Jasper, Copy AI, Pseudo Write,
Yep.
there are just ones that are, I think, have proven themselves to be better. Now, ChatGPT's good advantage, at least for people wanting to kind of mess around with it, is you can hop on ChatGPT's website right now and do it for free and not put in a credit card information or sign up for a subscription or anything.
Right.
Whereas the others are more pay to play tools.
Yeah, so these other language learning tools, and I'll be honest, I also haven't adopted all. I've played around. I've watched demos of some of the ones you've mentioned, like Copy AI and Jasper. I also played with a social media, a tool that kind of does what you were describing, like pull quotes from longer form blogs and stuff like that, called Lately.ai. Um, a lot of these tools, some of them are reasonable monthly, some of them are more expensive. I think that the benefits a lot of these features is they're made for a certain type of writing. They're not like just something where you prompt and you get a result. It's more, they have dashboards, they have tracking, they have like different features that you might use in your workflow, specifically in marketing, whether you're doing social media or content writing at scale. And I find a lot of these tools very helpful. I'll be honest, for some of the social media stuff, um, I've always used automation. I've always used platforms like Canva. I've always used scheduling tools like Hootsuite or Buffer. And I've always used like co-schedules, headline analyzer, different things to try to beat my score, SEO score, or open rate score for writing headlines or writing email subject lines. There are always these AI tools available. A lot of times though, my brain just thinks pretty quickly. I don't know. I just think of a catchy phrase, or I can say, "Oh, that's the pull quote," without a tool. But I think on when you're doing so many at scale, I do see the value. Now, one question, and I've discussed it with people on the show before, is like, well, will that mean that people will just go use these tools? The answer is no, because there are so many tools that have been around for ages now that are so easy. It's not about how hard they are. It's about time. It's about like, is that what you're a good use of your time? If you're a
Mhm.
CEO or you're a marketing executive, is this what you're going to be spending all your time on? People don't use these tools in general, and even they still want to hire marketers to use these tools for them and prompt them and play with them the same as they were the marketers who were using Canva and Google Docs and because we had Google Docs and you don't have to physically write with a pencil. I don't know, like you wouldn't hire a writer. I think in a few years from now we're gonna look back on these conversations and it's gonna seem obvious. It's gonna be like, oh yeah, it was just the new suite of tools. It was just the new just like with the internet, it didn't like replace a lot. Yes, it replaced certain things, of course, but people just found the way to use the internet to enhance their, to make their business more efficient. And just the way there were always a lot of cheap or free or easy to use tools before, the same is true now, and people didn't want to be playing around with them before. They don't want to do it now either. Not at least not more than recreationally. And marketers, I think what we need to do is figure out is the strategy and how to adapt, how to use and what quantity to use these tools, when to use them, and how to use them for our business's unique needs, like our clients' specific challenges. And that's not something
Exactly.
that an AI, uh, at least probably for the foreseeable for a long time, can. There's too many moving pieces. There's too many specifics.
Yeah.
That it won't be able to
It's
do.
too human. It's too relationship based. Like the it's so easy, I think, now to recognize like impersonal content. And I think something that's been really consistent in the conversation around marketing and sales, especially with individual businesses where a lot of people are their business, like I am my business. So any content that I put out, whether it's these podcasts or a post that I write or a conversation that I'm having with a potential client or a current client, it's all me. So I'm very reliant on my own perspective and voice and ability. So, as good as the tools that I use are, as good as this microphone is, or as fast as my computer is, or oh, should I get this kind of keyboard? Because then I could maybe output a few more words per minute, and that would make my writing more effective. That's all almost like layers on top of the base, which is me. So I think when we talk about marketing and whether you're using the tools or you're talking about the tools or you're talking about your product or you're trying to establish the validity of your product, it all has to go back to that place of like, okay, there's an actual person who had an idea and now they're trying to figure out how to connect with other people so that they will buy that idea, whether it's another individual who has their own business, another solopreneur, or it's a massive company. You're still dealing with the people. And other AIs, other pieces of technology aren't our ideal clients. It's the people that are using those pieces of technology who are our ideal clients. So even if we're talking through the channel of technology, through the channel of AI, we're still, the end goal is still to communicate with another person. So I think it has to then start with a person initially.
That's exactly it. People do business with people, and I
Yeah.
mean, as far as I know, at least so far robots don't have bank accounts. Maybe they
Yep.
will, eventually. And I think that's a long way away. But like going back to what I was saying before about how AI can maybe make us even more human, which is something I kind of was just thinking as I out loud on this podcast. So I love our conversations. I think that when you're, you know, it gets us back to fundamentals. What are people hiring us for as marketers?
Yeah.
In the traditional Mad Men days of like the 60s, were people hiring a graphic designer because of they knew how to draw? Were they hiring a copywriter because they know how to like type or on a typewriter or whatever? No. They hired the graphic designer because the graphic designer knows what colors and how to put them that would excite people or make them want to buy the product. The copywriter knew how to use words that would reverse engineer the goal. Like, let's say the company wants to sell to a certain audience, they have to understand that audience, their pain points, what kind of language would get them, highlight the benefit or tap into their insecurities or their aspirations to make them want to buy it. I think
Exactly.
today it's it's a lot of the same thing going on here. They're not hiring you to break up a bunch of text from a long form and put it into chunks. They're not hiring you to do the things that like predictive text, as you were talking about, the AI tool can do, which sometimes isn't even that good, as you said. Like that's not what I would have said. It's a good suggestion, just like Grammarly or Microsoft Word sometimes has good grammar, but a real professional editor might say that's not what I would have done. Um, it's good to have like more feedback in the room, a council rather than just like one head. In that regard, it's great to have an AI thinking with you. But like at the end of the day, just the idea of even thinking to go to these tools that you mentioned and play around with them and see how they could maximize results, that's something most clients don't think about or don't want to have the time to do. That you're already giving them their money's worth by already like, you know, your client might think, I want you to do X, Y, and Z project. And you're gonna be like, how can I stay on the cutting edge and know how to make this more efficient or make my job easier and make it faster for my client too by taking out the what used to take forever and know how to use these tools to my advantage. But then layer on
Exactly.
top of it my creative and strategic thinking and how do I help it play with other tools we're using? How do I fit it into their funnel or how do I make sure this how do I use these things to achieve their goals?
Yes.
And even helping them figure out what their goals should be. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where people are really hiring you for. And it's great that we can delegate or automate a lot of the details or busy work of that, which is not really what they hired you for. That was just a necessity of part of the
Of
job.
running the job, exactly, running the business. And I think what you said is so key. How do I use these tools? Not these tools aren't being made to get rid of my position or your position so that our clients can go and use them. If they can, good on them. I say that's awesome. I always encourage, if I'm talking to a client about writing a book, I always like to have that conversation of like, I get you want to work with me. I'd be thrilled to work with you too. Have you tried writing this on your own? Usually they've tried to write a few chapters or an outline, but they know it's not worth their time. It's maybe not where their skill sets lie. They have other interests. They'd rather work with somebody like me. So the tools aren't replacing me, they're benefiting me. And every individual creator, every individual person gets to choose how they use them. For me, I find it more effective to kind of stay in my normal flow. And as I said, as the integrations get better, I'm happy to start to use them. Other people would rather spend the majority of their time in the ChatGPT or one of the other AI windows and then go back into where they're actually putting the product together. Just like some people would have rather used a WYSIWYG rather than learn how to code. I think that's where it really has to be just an individual basis, how your mind works and how you want to use these tools. But the goal is still getting the best piece of content there for your clients.
Exactly. And exactly. Like some people are more right brain, some are left, some are more into tech tools, some are more into the creative, some are more into the business strategy. That's what's great about the marketing field. It uses all those things. But at the end of the day, it's really just helping our clients win. And we are the ones who, have to spot trends on Instagram or, oh, this new social platform's taking off, or,
Mm,
this style of writing is selling a lot of this type of product right now, or this design of a website is having higher conversions. And it's always changing. And we're not it's not to be a rocket scientist. It's to take the pain point out for our clients of them having to do that, of having to keep on track with everything, and we can figure out how to use it into our workflow, but ultimately make sure that we're using things, not having shiny object syndrome, but using things and integrating them at our own pace when they make sense, figuring out how to work them to our clients' best advantage. Last thing, we're gonna have to go, but like, I'd love to hear your closing thoughts. I'll first just say that another thing outside of writing and marketing that all this stuff has taught me is like don't just focus on your job or on your chosen field. Have a broader mind to also pay attention to like global trends across industries. I mean, I'm not saying become a news junkie, but pay attention to like what's going on in general, because it will give you a broader sense of how to understand shifts and changes and help you plan your moves. So like it forced me to get a little more interested also in just the general market and finance, real estate, things that I wasn't paying attention to as much, just because I think when you're looking at a broad um, cross industry perspective, it also helps you become a better marketer because you know what's going on, what are the trends, and if you're in any field, it helps you have a bigger picture of where the role you play, and how that basically the role you play in the bigger picture, which can help you
definitely.
figure out how to be ahead of the curve in your
Yeah.
industry or just in the job market in general. But
Yeah.
I'd love to hear you close us out. What are some takeaways?
I completely agree with everything you were saying. I think having a global awareness is so crucial to, when you're working hard and you're kind of grinding and trying to grow a business and increase your profits, and you're really focused on your own lane, you get a little pigeonholed and you got the blinders on and you're focused, and that's not a bad thing. But I think every now and then it's really, really healthy. It's good for your mind and just you as an individual to step outside of that lane and go and look at what's happening in an industry that is couldn't be more different from your own. What's happening in the agricultural field right now with new crop technologies and the conversation around GMOs and health and, being a vegan versus being a carnivore, which is actually better for the environment. Like thinking about other things like that. Um, and to bring it back to me and what I do, I always say that you can't be a writer without also being a reader. And I heard something on a podcast I was listening to the other day, which talked about the importance of reading, but not only reading in the genre that you love or the field that you love, but read other weird things. Read a book about, the Vietnam War. Or one of my favorite authors is Michael Pollan, because he talks about stuff that has nothing to do with my field, but he's a phenomenal writer. And I love learning about botany and plants and stuff like that, and psychedelics, and just things outside of what I spend the majority of my time doing. I
His
think
last
that's a
name is
really
Pollen.
Michael Pollan. I know, perfect to talk about plants
I
too,
was gonna
right?
say,
It's
what is he
funny.
writing about, plants? Okay.
I know,
Well, wow.
kismet.
That's so
So
cool.
that's where I go to, is like, yeah, expand your thinking, get out of your comfort zone, and read some different things.
Oh, totally, totally, definitely. And I also enjoy podcast videos. Some people out there, if that's how you consume content, just broaden your mind because it helps broaden your perspective. I even once heard a panel of reporters back when I was in high school. They said, besides the craft of writing, like be interested in everything, like take an interest, like read other stuff, like you're 100% right. And I think having a cross industry broad perspective brings ideas in ways you never know will show up in your work. So thank you.
Exactly.
That's a great
Yeah.
takeaway to share with us, Adam. Thank you so much for being back, and I look forward to more conversations in the future.
Absolutely, Zev. Yeah, we'll definitely set another one up. And yeah, this was a blast.